Crisantema, Chrissy Gallardo. Well, we're out here just to defend workers at foster farms. It's been an injustice that has been happening, not just right now. I think COVID amplifies the lack of dignified treatment of workers in the Central Valley. Foster farms has exploited my own aunt and uncle when they immigrated here, started working at foster farms, and as of like 3 years ago, my aunt had to stop working here because of injuries.
My name is Kelly.
And Kelly, you're a nurse that's with National Nurses United. What are your concerns coming out here today to this factory, Foster Farms factory?
I'm a COVID nurse, so I work on a COVID unit. My friend had actually told me about this event that was going on, and I've taken care of Foster Farms patients, a few of them actually. So the stuff that I see, I can resonate with, and that's why I wanted to come out and support them, because the people who don't experience COVID or don't know what it's like, they don't see what's going on in the hospital and how these patients suffer. And a lot of it is at the hands of people who aren't protecting them. And we're all, at the end of the day, we're all humans and we all should be protected from this kind of issue. I know a lot of the hospitals, because I'm from Fresno, a lot of the hospitals were affected. Staffing has definitely been an issue. We don't have a lot of resources, and it's definitely changed the workflow. But just seeing how patients, the COVID is just, it's a terrible disease to watch. And I would hate for it to be spread without, I want people to be protected regardless. And knowing that Foster Farms it's a hot spot. I've taken care of patients. I've talked to patients face to face, and it's really sad. But the fact that people are in denial of wanting to talk about it, it angers me, because it's still going to exist whether or not we want to turn our head to it, and it's still going to get spread. People are still going to suffer. There's people still dying just because the numbers aren't big right now. So it still needs to be something that needs to be talked about.
And these workers who get sick here, do you know if they're going to get health care?
Honestly, probably not. We don't know. I mean, I don't know if they offer insurance here, but there's a lot of people who wait till the last minute before they decide to go in and get help. And when they wait that long, odds are they probably won't make it.
My name is Kaden Lore. I was actually a former employee at Foster Farm, and one of my ex-advisor actually reached out to me to show up at this event to protest against coronavirus at Foster Farm, due to the fact that Foster Farm, they do have a lot of money and they treat their workers like dirt. So then the reason why I'm here is to help support, because I don't want any of my fellow coworkers here to catch the virus. And actually one of my coworkers actually passed away from it. His name was Richard. He worked in DC 2. He was a cycle counter. And I don't want anything like that to happen again. He was one of the best coworkers. He was one of the nicest guys, and yet he passed away due to the coronavirus. They come in and they tell us, hey, you're doing it wrong, go do something else or go home. And then, another way of mistreating, they don't enforce the 6 feet, they don't enforce, cleaning your areas, this and that. And then a lot of the things that we dislike was the pay. The pay is barely over minimum wage.
Appreciate everybody for coming out here so early in the day, and many of us came from the Bay Area. I came from Los Angeles. The Central Valley is feeding the entire country, and these workers that work right here, they're the heroes that make sure we have food in our bellies. And even though maybe our protest is a little smaller than maybe some of us thought, it's extremely important for us to be here today. So I'm going to go ahead and read the statement here. It's from Martha. I'll read it in Spanish first, and then I'll translate it. ¿Cuántas muertes más quieren? Tanto mi esposo. ¿Cuántas muertes más quieren? Tanto mi esposo como yo fuimos empleados con Foster Farms durante 20 años. Acabo de perder a mi marido, que trabajó para la compañía por más de 27 años. Ahora sé que Foster Farms no se preocupa por sus trabajadores, que solo se preocupan por su dinero. How many more deaths do they want? Both my husband and I were loyal employees for 20 years. I just lost my husband who worked for the company for over 27 years. I know now that Foster Farms does not care about their workers. They only care about their money. And I think that's extremely true. And it's not only true about Foster Farms, but it's true about many, many, many corporations all across California, across the country. I think it's also true about the prisons and the jails and the detention centers. We heard of this private detention center down a couple cities south of here that just opened up, and the first cases of COVID-19 already popped up. And so it's extremely important for us to continue to organize our community, to continue to build solidarity between workers, between all oppressed people. So I really appreciate each and every one of you for turning out here today. Thank you.
No more debt!
Life over profit!
As our people, Merced County in particular, we're the 6th in the nation with the highest percentage of essential workers. That means that 1 in every 3 households has young people and immigrants and refugees that are out there working at foster farms, working at Dole, and even working in the fields. I'm proud to be the daughter of undocumented farm workers. Unfortunately, living in the Central Valley during this COVID pandemic has been really stressful. It has uplifted the injustice that we have been experiencing for the last decade. It's not even decades, but since the establishment of this country, where Black, Indigenous people of color have been exploited and have been treated as disposable. And COVID is only amplifying the injustice that is experienced by workers at foster farms. My cousin is working right now inside of that plant. My aunt had to stop working about 5 years ago because her body couldn't handle working here anymore. They treat humans as machinery, will work them till our people die. And this is the same thing in the field. So I'm just really appreciative that we're all here today across the state to uplift the injustice and the exploitation of people that have been happening in this valley, because we're not taking it anymore. And we're gonna make sure that post-COVID, we don't go back to the way things were, and that big ag and companies like Foster Farm are held accountable for the exploitation and extraction and death that they've been causing in this region. I'm gonna be reading a statement by Cecilia Tofoya, who lives in this community of Livingston. As a resident of this community, I am upset, scared, and confused. I'm only a few blocks away from the plant. I see the hustle and bustle every morning of those employees on their way to work. I see these employees walk to the plant every morning with a smile and a wave as they continue down the road to their job. Little did I know, some of those employees were on their way to an awful outcome. In my neighborhood alone, we have multiple employees from the plant. Within a week, many of those employees contracted the virus, which resulted in their family also getting it. Just down the street, there is a family who immigrated to the United States. This family is heavily involved in the community of Livingston, whether it be hosting posadas to display their culture or even coaching the youth soccer group. This family is kind, friendly, and have been employees with the company for over 20 years. As I walked to my car one night, I could hear the heartbreaking cry coming from family members mourning the sudden loss of a great member of our community. The cry of a daughter who lost her father, a brother who lost his sibling, and a wife who lost her other half. You begin to question, what if? What if Foster Farms took the time to look at these individuals as human beings? What if Foster Farms took the time to take precautionary measures? What if this all could have been avoided? What if you cared for your employees? Or our community relies heavily on foster farms for employment, for food, and for resources. Our community is also scared to lose the only source of income they have, scared to stand up to a corporation. To those employees that are scared to speak up, please let us be your voice. And I'll also just add that we also demand that Merced County do its part. Merced County elected officials and even the directors of these various departments cannot continue to listen to what these CEOs at foster farms want. They need to ensure that this company is testing employees constantly. They need to ensure that people know their rights about paid sick leave. They need to ensure that people have N95 masks. They need to also make sure that we provide mental wellness support for the families that are going through grief right now. That is culturally relevant. And Merced County elected officials need to also ensure that people have basic income. If they're unable to work because they're ill or they're sick, Merced County needs to have a program for the families of these workers. They need to also do their part because we cannot continue to place profit over people.
My name is Jess Serenellis with the Merced Brown Berets. We can't even get the COVID numbers for the county broken down by ethnicity. So we really can't see how hard communities of color are being impacted in Merced County. And that includes the workers that are here in Livingston, because that's really, to be able to address health disparities in the most vulnerable communities, we need that type of data.
So you're saying they kept the data secret?
Well,
they wouldn't release it?
They haven't even created a mechanism to be able to keep track of that stuff. Because I have asked public health employees for those numbers, as well as like there's numbers that are hard to get through the Merced County jail system also. So we don't know how hard our folks that are incarcerated in the county are being impacted by COVID, including the juvenile hall.
So what you're saying, this company really doesn't want this information out?
No, it's all intertwined also, right, with other agencies in the county.
So where's Cal-OSHA? Why hasn't Cal-OSHA come to this plant and protected the workers?
Well, it's all about capitalism and the disrespect that they have for the working class, the proletariat in the Central Valley, with what our farm workers are a part of, including food processing farm workers also.
And many workers have said they're afraid to speak out. Is that true?
Of course it's true. And we can't be angry with them for continuing to want to work here. We live in a county where the poverty rate is extremely high. The median income is extremely low, but the cost of living has only been climbing, and we need to live. And that's also why it's always been a struggle to organize in the Central Valley, because we are a working class community. Our people are too busy working hard to survive. We got two parents working in the fields, working in factories to survive, and still not making it. And so for them to be socially, conscious of what's going on is a hard ask.
It's kind of like slave labor.
Oh, it's definitely slave labor. It's exactly what it is. We got one group of people profiting off the suffering of the working class.
And this, the fact that the public health department here seems to be, it's going along with the wishes of this company. What does that say about the government agencies?
Well, the Board of Supervisors of Merced County, they are protectors of white supremacy, and they are protectors of capitalism. It's as simple as that. So this is business as usual for them. It's just that now that it's during a pandemic, so everything's amplified.
And the issue of the police, has there been repression here in Merced County?
Well, there's always been repression here in Merced County, and through the hands of law enforcement. That is why you always see law enforcement ingrained in the local government, right? They're either on city councils, they're either endorsing county supervisors, they're unions or police officers associations, or connected to elected officials, and it's for that reason, because they want their hands on that budget dollars. I mean, that's why, like, for me personally, I'm running for city council in Merced District 1. You know, my plan is to set up systems within the city so we can start having that conversation about defunding police. You know, I think because law enforcement has our hands in everything. And, you know, so their inaction, especially from the Sheriff Warnicki, and not wanting to put restrictions on businesses that are, you know, not practicing social distancing, is disrespectful to the working class.
You think anything's going to change here?
You know, I think things are going to get worse before they get better. You know, and like, I'm hoping that people come together and create that change before that change comes from collapse. You know, because if the change that we want comes from collapse, that means our loved ones are going to suffer. So, like, I'm always hopeful. I'm a dreamer that things will get better by us coming together.
Hi, my name is Shang Zhang, and I work with Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. They had a shutdown a few weeks ago, and you know, we had asked the Board of Supervisors to adopt stricter policies to prevent an outbreak like this from ever happening again. You know, they could have done something earlier on when people were you know, sending letters and raising concerns. You know, there wasn't enough done, and that's why I think we have seen the 9 deaths and nearly 400 positive cases. And I don't, you know, it might have gone down recently, but, you know, there's a concern that it could spike again because of the, you know, winter season, the flu season, and we hope that they have taken enough precautions. But it has yet to be seen, so we are still concerned, and, you know, I don't think this issue has ended. If anything, you know, people have to be aware that, you know, people have gone back to work. I don't know if how the conditions have changed inside, but we hope that they've gotten better, but nothing like this should ever happen again, and it could have prevented 9 unnecessary deaths. So when companies do this, they're looking at their profits. You know, they could have done something sooner to help save these lives and to prevent people from getting sick themselves. But, you know, they have production goals to meet, and, you know, they're going to go, they're going to do whatever they need to meet them, but at whose expense? And, you know, how does that risk their own employees? And so we want them to see the human beings behind these production lines. I mean, people in the facilities themselves, they're concerned, and they're afraid they're going to take it back to their families. So, you know, their only form of protest is to call in sick or to not show up, and you know, they have to take care of themselves, choose between their lives or their livelihoods. And some people have decided to quit. Some people, you know, are forced to stay because that's their only form of income. No, the choice is really hard. Nobody should ever have to choose between their health or making a living. But the concern is, you know, if people get it here, they'll take it, you know, home, and it does spread in the community. I think that was the outrage that people were talking about. Like, this is not just affecting the employers at Foster Farms, it's going to affect the entire community.
My name is Ramon. So currently right now we are here outside of the headquarters of Foster Farms. There are a lot of reports that CDC guidelines are not being followed, but Foster Farms already has a very notorious reputation for being incredibly inhumane to their workers, which is not unheard of here in the Central Valley, as that is the common, that's not unheard of here in the Central Valley, as that is very common. A lot of the workers in the agriculture field, and especially in canneries, are taken advantage of, coerced into going into work. So people come into work, they're told that their doctor's note are not valid if they are sick. They are coerced into coming into work even if they might have COVID. If they test, they're still asked to come in until they test positive. So that's a huge issue, where it's if workers are sick and they get tested and then they're asked to come in and then they test positive and then they allow them to be home. Imagine all the people that they infected already. Now, the other thing is that this town And the Central Valley, the biggest thing here is agriculture and food processing plants. That's the biggest source of income, and it is their #1 business here in the Central Valley. So in one household alone, you can have someone that works at Foster Farms, Dole, Del Monte, Sensiet, Blue Diamond Nut Company, and so on. So imagine what's happening, and it's not just imagining because this is actually happening. We're seeing it, we're hearing it, we're seeing people die. There's a widespread that is happening within each plant. This facility alone, there has been 9 deaths, at least that have been reported. There are reports that it might be up to 13 and even more. Now, one of the things that's happening here is that with this that is spreading, people here in the community, a lot of folks in the community work here. So what's happening is starting to spread within the community itself, which is spreading to different towns. So there's a huge outbreak of COVID that's happening, and people are starting to just, will die. And even with the passing, folks are still not really doing anything to provide these workers safety. So we're here to protest, and so we can get the CDC guidelines enforced, so we can get 1,000 more Cal-OSHA inspectors so they can implement these guidelines. We need the safety of these workers. And the thing is that even if it's not for the workers, because I know there's some selfish people out there, this also affects the nation's food. So if people who are, the Central Valley provides the nation and the world's food. So that's 99% of fruits and nuts and a bunch of other things that come from here. This is one of the largest facilities in the world. This Foster Farms is one of the largest meat producing or poultry producing factories in the world.
It has 2,700 workers?
Has 2,700, feels like it's higher than that. Is it 2,700? So it's like, imagine these folks who are providing for food banks, who are providing for hospitals, schools, prisons, the restaurants, etc., etc. If they're infected and it's passing through the food, it's just a matter of time when there's a huge outbreak throughout the nation, an even worse outbreak. And the thing is that back in March, when we knew this was going to happen. We knew that there was going to be outbreaks within these factories, and we said it, we mentioned it multiple times, and what happened? Nothing happened. And so we're here asking and demonstrating that we as people do have power and that we will be listened to.
Do you think the makeup of the workforce has something to do about how they're treated? Mostly Latino, Black, Sikh?
Oh, absolutely. So the thing is that a lot of people who are working in these facilities are BIPOC folks, primarily Latinx folks and Middle Eastern folks in this facility alone. Now, there's a no-brainer here. There is a clear power discretion that is happening. The folks that are in charge, and that are higher ups and supervisors, like the person who just came out here that called the cops on us, they're all white. And this isn't even a theory or anything. We know this is happening. We know this is true. Look at the nation. Look at what's happening. They're treating us like we're dispensable, and they're saying we're dispensable. And the thing is that we're not, right? We provide the nation's food.
And you think this is you say the virus you believe is going to spread. What about Governor Newsom and Cal-OSHA? Why haven't they come to this plant and really protected the workers?
I mean, that's a good question. Governor Newsom, why haven't you been over here in this plant to check it out and see what's going on? Why don't you come to the Central Valley and see what's going on? We need your help. We need help. We need folks to come in here. A lot of these folks are concerned citizens with people who work in these plants. These folks they're terrified to speak up. They're scared. But then when they come home, we're seeing them so anxious. Their anxiety is spiking. They have panic attacks. And they're afraid to go into work because they're going into their own deaths. So, Governor Newsom, where are you? Please come through. Help us out here. I know there's a lot of things that are going on in the nation, but we also need your help.
And some of the mayors here, Atwood Mayor, said that they were against masks and the sheriff wasn't going to enforce any mask laws. And what's going on with these politicians here in Merced?
Well, honestly, I don't know, but the Atwater mayor, Atwater, California, named the city of Atwater as a sanctuary city or town. saying that they weren't going to follow any guidelines or any mandated rules from California. It wasn't until it was reported that they were not going to get any some sort of assistance that then all of a sudden they started complying. But the sheriff sent a letter saying that he was not going to enforce any of the policies, any mask wearing policies. And so what ended up happening in Atwater for the first several months, and even still now, it feels like nothing has changed, because people are still going around like it's their usual day. And the issue is that everything remained open, because here in our town, the primary things that we have for work are the quote-unquote essential jobs. And they are essential. We are very much essential. But the thing is that they're treating us like we're not essential. They're treating us like we're dispensable. But here's a question. What happens when we all die? Because it's already happening. People are already dying one by one. Sorry. People are already dying. So what happens when we die? Who's gonna make the nation's food? And I don't think people are recognizing that or thinking about that. Because they see Latinx folks, they see brown folks, and they're just like, oh, yeah. A bunch of them, they're going to die, but then we have more people that are going to come into work. Well, let me tell you, what happens when all these communities start to get infected and start to pass out or start to die and pass away? Who's going to go in there and work? Who's going to then provide the food? We have the power to starve the nation. It's just a matter of time.
Well, there's a union here, United Farm Workers of America, and they threaten to boycott. What's the role of the union? Because if the workers are terrified to speak out, what does that say about the union?
Honestly, I have no idea. I mean, I haven't heard anything. I mean, they're here. They just showed up. There's one right there, and there's another one on the other side. But prior to, I mean, if workers are coming up to their kids and their offspring, asking them, we need help, then what is that saying about said union? Do they not feel comfortable going to them themselves? If you need to contact us, by all means, you can follow us on Facebook, Central Valley versus COVID, or you can send us an email, centralvalleyversuscovid@gmail.com, or in Spanish, Centro Valle contra COVID, @gmail.com.
It's really important that we take a stand whenever we have a health situation here that is of serious concern, not just to the workers here in this factory. Of course, they are the primary victims of it, but also the health impact of this to the wider to the customers of this plant. So I want to say something about first of all about workers, the essential workers who provide food. And of course, these workers here are putting a chicken on our tables. So they are essential workers. So they have to work through the pandemic. And regardless of the conditions, and with the outbreak of COVID here, 300, almost 400 cases, it's a really, really serious problem. Not only in the meat packing, but you'd be surprised as to why COVID is so prevalent among farm workers. Okay, so I've spent quite a bit of time in the past few weeks in the Salinas Valley, and I'm looking at how the farm work is being done in the Salinas Valley. And it's not workers spread out over a field, but rather they're working with a machine, and they're packed together, shoulder to shoulder. And so when one worker gets COVID, well, let the truck pass. When one worker gets COVID, it gets transmitted among the workers in that who are harvesting. There's a machine where they're packing the boxes of produce, and they're working shoulder to shoulder. So it's really like a factory in the field. You really have to see it to believe it. How our entire agriculture is being industrialized, and how this creates ideal conditions for the spread of COVID. The other thing I want to mention is this is a wider public health issue. And this came to my attention when way back at the beginning of the pandemic, you recall that there were epidemics going on in meat packing plants across the country, mainly in the Midwest and in the Southeast. And Donald Trump wanted to reopen all those plants. He wanted to issue an executive order to force all those plants to open. And that's exactly what we didn't need. Here's why. Because inside this plant, you actually have some of the most ideal conditions for the growth and spread of the virus. I'm a medical scientist, and the virus thrives on the surface of meat because the meat is wet, right? And this is a refrigerated facility, so it's cold. So the virus is preserved well in cold. And so the virus can be all over these surfaces and all over the meat. There have been no precautions taken here in this factory or in any of those other factories in the Midwest and the Southeast to prevent, to ensure that there's no COVID in the meat. It goes out to consumers. There's a high probability of COVID on that meat. The main thing is that when you cook with meat, you have to, after you handle the raw meat, you have to wash your hands thoroughly. Once it's cooked, it's okay, but the risk is in handling the raw meat. So this is a serious public health issue. We will never know how many people got COVID by handling raw meat in this country because there's no way to track it. Anyway, so I think we all have to stand in solidarity with the workers here, with the community here that is so badly affected, and also with the farm workers.
First of all, thanks for coming out here today. And it's interesting that there are no corporate media here today. Isn't that strange? This has been the first rally in front of this plant, and not one corporate news agency has been out here today. I wonder why. Maybe it's because Foster Farms controls them. Maybe it's because they don't want to tell people what's really going on at this plant. What's really going on in this plant is a crime, is a murder of the workers. That's what's going on at this plant. They knew that this COVID was coming, and they did nothing to prepare the workers. They did not inform the workers in Spanish and Hmong and other languages that they needed to be protected. That's the law. Now, we had a police officer come along here checking us out without a mask, and a brother asked him, "Where's your mask?" They don't care. So here the police officers aren't even wearing masks. What does that tell you about the police? I'm also with the Committee to Stop Police Terrorism and End Systemic Racism. And that's another thing that's happening in this plant. One of the reasons this is happening is because these workers are Latino, are black, are immigrants, are Asians. They don't give a damn because they are minorities, they're immigrants. That's why they're not getting the treatment. It's racism because the owners of this plant are white and all they care about are the profits. They want more profits over the bodies of these workers. That's why we are calling for the criminal prosecution of the CEO of Foster Farms. These executives should be criminally prosecuted for murder. They also should be criminally prosecuted for workers' comp because workers are getting sick in this plant and they're telling them to go home. They're not reporting it to workers' comp. Now that is workers' comp fraud. If you don't report that a worker is sick in your plant, you're committing a fraud. It's a felony. We have to demand that the District Attorney of Merced County and Xavier Becerra, who's the Attorney General of California, prosecute these executives and managers for fraud, for workers' comp fraud, and for murder. Also, I'm with the United Front Committee for Labor Party. One of the reasons is we hear the Democrats who run California, Gavin Newsom, there are less than 200 inspectors, OSHA inspectors, for 18 million workers. And he knew that there was going to be a pandemic. They refused to hire 1,000 new inspectors. That's why we're demanding that there be 1,000 Cal-OSHA inspectors hired immediately. This is an emergency. It's not going away. We're going to have the second wave of this virus. It potentially could kill millions of people. But, this governor is ignoring what's going on here in the Central Valley. He visited the Big Basin to look at the trees that were burned. Why hasn't he been here to greet with the workers, to be with their families? Are trees more important than workers? Now, the other aspect of this thing is what's going on in Central Valley. In Atwood, the mayor and the police did not want to enforce the rules. They did not want to enforce the laws. They don't want to protect workers. So they have a Trumpite view. Let's have herd immunity. So millions of people die. Well, who gets hurt? It's the workers that don't have health insurance. It's the workers who are poor and large families who are living together in this community. That's who die. They don't give a damn, really, that those workers are dying in those communities. So we have to oppose that. We have to demand health care for all. It should be a human right. We have to demand that this company pay for funerals of workers who die. They won't even pay for the funerals of workers who've died at this plant, and they're making billions of dollars. How dare them? That is a crime that's going on here. You can't even pay for the funerals of the workers at this plant who die. Now, the other Council for Latin American Advancement is also supporting this rally, and Desiree Rojas has spoken in favor of it, and they issued a statement.
My name is Desiree Rojas. Soy la presidente de Plaza Sacramento chapter, and I want to say that our chapter is in solidarity with the community and the families and the workers in Livingston and throughout the state of California right now who are enduring an attack not only on their lives, their livelihood, their health, their jobs, and their families. And it's absolutely beyond belief and bankrupt of morality to know that workers today in Nuestra Raza, poor people, black people, Indian people, Asian people, all people that are suffering in such horrifying working conditions. And we want to be able to say that this movement, we are very impressed and very excited to see that the community has come out in defense of their families and of the community. And that for California to be the fifth largest economy in the world, many, and like our organization, have been writing the governor, asking the governor and demanding the governor that he create 2,000 positions of emergency Cal-OSHA investigators to investigate the food industry and also corporations and businesses throughout this state where there are essential workers, the poorest of workers, to protect their lives and their families' lives and to protect their jobs. And the governor has not done that yet. And we are demanding that he does that. We're demanding that the Attorney General do his job and protect the families and the citizens of the state of California. If passing the laws is the only way that we are going to get justice, we could create millions of laws, but if we don't enforce them, then what the hell did we put them in place for? I also want to say to all the women who are on the front line, who are suffering through this horrible failure by state and federal government and leaders, that it's a huge slap in the face, and an embarrassment to the state of California to see women and children and families suffering like this, and families losing their loved ones for something that could have been prevented through the fair labor and the health and welfare, putting health and welfare practices in place during this pandemic would have saved the lives of the people who are no longer here today. And when they demand, or when they come to us and they want us to vote, we need to remind them that when they want our vote, they need to also stand by the workers and the families who are on the front line
Also, the ILW Local 34 has sent a statement of solidarity, and our committee, the Committee to Stop Police Terrorism and End Systemic Racism, will be continuing this fight and organizing, because this is not going to be the last action that we have. The deaths are going to continue in the plant. The sicknesses are continuing. And the police here should be arresting the executives. That's who they should be arresting. Arrest the managers and the executives who are committing crimes. That's what we have to do. Thank you, brothers and sisters.
Okay, next we're going to hear from Christina, who works in a food processing plant in a neighboring town.
Buenos días. Lo primero que quiero decir es gracias a toda la gente que está aquí apoyándonos, porque todos los que estamos trabajando en las compañías pensamos que no tenemos voz, pensamos que no nos escuchan, porque son injusticias lo que trabajamos allá adentro. Piensan que son poderosos. Nadie es poderoso en este mundo. Todos somos iguales. Nosotros trabajamos muy duro. Si nosotros no hay trabajo, lo único que quiero decir es que mis compañeros o la gente que trabaja en las canerías se quiten este miedo. Es un miedo terrible que nos acorra, que nos hace traicioneros. Salgan a la calle, digan a su gente que hay muchas personas que nos oyen, que nos quieren apoyar, que ya stop de que no nos traten como no somos humanos. Somos todos humanos. Todos tenemos responsabilidad y sabemos nuestra responsabilidad cuando vamos a los trabajos. No necesitamos un chicote, no necesitamos que nos traten horrible, que nos traten como humanos que somos. Cuando hay un accidente, nos llevan a la oficina. ¿Por qué te caíste? O es que yo reporté esto y no me hicieron caso. Ok, nos dan un papelito, nos llevan a los recursos humanos, no nos escuchan. Eso para mí es injusto. Hay personas mayores de edad que tienen 30, 35 años. Cuando vienen personas jóvenes, les dan el poder de mandar a esas personas que tenemos muchísima capacidad, muchísima experiencia para los trabajos. ¿Qué hacen? Nos quitan de los puestos. Estamos enfermas, toda la gente de esa canería, del estrés, de ansiedad, y nadie nos escucha. Nadie nos dice cómo te sientes. Al contrario, dale, dale, dale. Eso no es justo, porque la comida se va a otros países, a otros lugares por nuestro trabajo. Si tú tratas bien a tu gente, la gente va a trabajar mejor y no va a estar tan enferma. Ahora, como este COVID que está pasando, que es pandemia para todo el mundo, es cuando más tenemos que estar unidos. Otra cosa, sí, como dicen, les importa a las compañías el dinero. Ya, no te importa tu vida, no le importa la vida de tus hijos, de tus nietos, de nada. A ellos no les interesa que se tire el producto, porque te quieren ver trabajar como esclavo. Ya se acabó esa esclavitud. Yo estoy muy orgullosa de que ustedes me escuchen y que mi gente se me escucha. Aquí estamos para ayudarlos. Todo se puede en esa vida, nomás que tenemos un pánico de miedo. Hay personas que yo conozco, que yo he ido a verlos porque se enfermaron de la enfermedad del COVID. Es una tristeza verlos, que nuestros patrones o nuestros mayordomos, nadie se apura por nosotros. Si nosotros no nos apuramos, ellos nunca se van a apurar por nosotros. Mi gente, salgan a luchar, salgan esta voz que nos escucha. Hay personas que nos escuchan, por favor. No quiero verlas tiradas a veces que se desmayan por la ansiedad. línea y te llevan para el comedor y ahí te dejan abandonado. ¿Es justo, muchachos, todo eso? Tenemos que hacer algo. Pero si ellos no hacen nada por ellos, aquí estamos nosotros para levantar nuestra voz para ellos. Muchísimas gracias a todos. Les digo, hay personas que les dan poder, muchísimo poder. Cuando tenemos nosotros 20, 30 años y no nos valoran nuestro trabajo que nosotros hacemos. No nos valoran. ¿Por qué? Una, quizá porque no hablamos inglés. Pero el inglés no importa. No importa el inglés. Lo que importa es nuestra actitud, cómo trabajamos, cómo tratamos a nuestros compañeros. Esa es una actitud buena para una persona que les dan el puesto que no se lo merecen. Hay una persona que tiene 50 años allí trabajando. La sacaron injustamente porque no la dejaban ir al baño y se orinó. La llevaron a la oficina y le dijeron que porque no sabía trabajar, que ya era muy lenta para trabajar. ¿Es justo, muchachos, todo lo que pasa? Esa señora puede ser su abuelita, su mamá, su tía o una vecina cercana a ustedes. ¿Sí me entienden? Yo entiendo todas esas personas que trabajamos en las compañías, como les acabo de repetir. Quizá ustedes tengan estudios bien preparados y los felicito. La gente que estamos adentro no estamos preparadas para salir a la calle porque siempre estamos atrapados en esa compañía. ¿Sí me entiendes? Y por eso a veces nos sentimos inútiles, pero no somos inútiles. Somos bien inteligentes que pensamos que no somos inteligentes y sí lo somos. Compañeras, salgan a luchar, salgan a hablar con sus vecinas, con sus vecinos, que sí se puede. Unidos se puede en este mundo. Gracias, muchachos. Gracias, gracias.
An injury to one is an injury to all. Together we rise, together they fall. An injury to one is an injury to all. Together we rise, together